became president.
Yeah, right.
But he was nothing before he became a governor.
Right. No, that's very true. And
What about Arnold
did have a lot of
Schwarzenegger? I thought he worked out
What's
okay. I
wrong
mean,
with y'all? Y'all love him. He was
Donald
y'all
Trump.
child.
exactly. Yeah. How about Trump?
Yeah, Dr. Trump ain't ran for a damn thing before
We're
that.
on overtime.
I-
As compensatory, because I didn't get to Bob on the last Matthew McConaughey topic, and there was some big news that Bob is particularly good on. I'm going to throw it to Bob. Talk about Rittenhouse. Talk about this latest shooting. What's your take?
Well, the Rittenhouse case was a landmark case of self-defense. You know, it clearly laid out that you have the right to defend yourself, even if you're stupid and put yourself in a bad position like Rittenhouse did, where he probably didn't have any business being there. But once you're attacked, you have the right to defend yourself. We have a very important case of self-defense coming up here in Houston, a retrial of the sentencing hearing of a man who I think clearly defended himself, and yet the prosecutors went after him, prosecuted him, convicted him, but there were some problems with the jury instructions, and now they're going to look at the sentencing issue over again. That issue was, I think Rittenhouse really brings that back to the forefront, and we need to take a look at this case in particular. The shooting, the school shooting now where the parents have been charged, that's a really interesting reach for the prosecutors to come out. Unfortunately, the DA got a little bit of premature excitement there going on and went out and told the parents they were going to be charged and gave them the opportunity to flee. And so then law enforcement had to do a manhunt to find these two parents and bring them back into custody. There's a lot of issues in that case where the parents seemed to know that their child was having problems and yet went out and purchased this handgun for him, purchased it for him. It's not that this child just went and got a hold of a handgun that he wasn't supposed to get a hold of. They bought it for him. They took him to the range and trained him. They said not to allow, you know, he got caught searching for ammunition while he was in school on searching Google for ammunition, and mom just laughed and said, "Don't get caught next time." There was a lot of indicators there that these parents knew what was going on. She texted him immediately once the news got out that there was a shooting at the school and said, "Please don't do this." Or, you know, she knew her son was troubled, and yet she put a gun in his hands. And both of these parents are going to be held accountable. They've been charged with manslaughter now, and at the very least, it's completely irresponsible gun ownership.
Well, they were also charged with negligent homicide, which I think is probably the more likely charge to stick.
Yeah. Holly, what was your take?
I haven't followed that very closely, but yeah, that'll be interesting to watch to see. And it is very shocking that the parents would behave in that way. I mean, if it's not illegal, my goodness, you know, what's happened to parenting in this country.
And the school's got some culpability in this issue too. The kid had that gun in his backpack in the principal's office just hours before the shooting, and the you know, a clearly troubled kid. The principal comes out and says that there was no discipline warranted, and I think there's a lot of questions to be answered.
I think there'll be a private lawsuit against the school also by the parents. The whole thing was just kind of bungled.
Hey, let's swing back to the Stop I-45.
No. Now you talked about the Rittenhouse. We're gonna talk about.
Oh, you want to talk about it? Okay.
No,
I thought y'all were pausing.
We're going to talk about the other
We
one.
want to talk about the Ahmaud Arbery case.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to talk about that.
No,
Now,
absolutely. Go ahead.
When that started, they were so worried about the makeup of the jury. You know, they were really worried that with this makeup that they were going to get away with this. And then, you know, you get in there and brazenly, the guy's like, "Well, I don't want no black pastors here. Okay, we can't have black pastors in there." I mean, all this, and yet they were all convicted. They were all convicted. I mean, these people could see this was wrong, you know. So that really, I mean, it truly, it shocked me, and I was a happy shock that they were all convicted, because what they did was wrong. I mean, I don't think being black jargon should be a crime. It shouldn't. And I'm sure other people in that neighborhood saw them building this new house and went in there and looked, ooh, they got a spiral staircase. Hell, I look when I'm over here because they building a house on every block over here. And I'll be like, damn, look at that door. Okay, I mean, yes. So I'm very, very, very proud of the jury in the Ahmaud Arbery trial because many people were concerned that that wouldn't go that way. So I'm very glad that it did.
Yeah, I watched a lot of the testimony in that case when one of the defendants took the stand and was trying to lay out this case of how professionally trained he was as a former law enforcement person, and de-escalation and all this, when clearly they hunted this guy down, and yes, there was the element of he came at them while he was holding a gun. Arbery came at them while he was holding a gun, and therefore maybe I felt threatened on that. But this was a case where they were clearly the aggressors in this matter, and your right to self-defense when you're an aggressor kind of goes out the window.
He was holding the gun they were trying to shoot at him with.
Right.
He was trying to get it from in front of him. He wasn't holding a gun. He was telling them, don't shoot me.
This reaction of people running towards somebody pointing a gun at you, that is the most stupid thing. We saw that in Lubbock last week where a domestic situation got out of hand and a man came out with a shotgun, and instead of backing away, the guy charges him and tries to take the gun away from him. That is never going to end well. If somebody points a gun at you, get cover, get away. Don't challenge that person.
Hey, look, Janice, what's on your radar?
Well, I mean, we haven't talked about it, but we're still waiting on the Supreme Court to decide those cases that are pending involving the firefighters and collective bargaining. There are rumors that even if the Supreme Court, makes a decision, which will likely be a decision in the union's favor, that there'll be something else coming down the pike to continue to just keep delaying and delaying it.
Well, I'd like to see that decision come down one way or the other, and before the mayor's term ends. He shouldn't, he's going to leave this for the next administration, and one way or the other, it's going to be his legacy. Thoughts, Bill?
Hey, let me back up for a second. I want to talk for a minute about the Roe v. Wade decision, and I want to talk specifically to my conservative friends here, because here's the thing that I think y'all are not recognizing. If you say that the Supreme Court has no role in this, you're going to leave it to the legislatures, then you may have Congress decide that they're going to make a national abortion law under the Commerce Clause, which the Supreme Court has been very liberal in granting wide latitude to Congress on that. This whole idea about we're going to have strict construction and only read what's in the Constitution, I don't think that's a conservative view at all, because all of the restrictions on government's actions have been by the Supreme Court reading things into the Constitution, which, by the way, the 9th Amendment specifically says all the rights in the Bill of Rights are not the only rights that are out there. There's other rights, conservative commentator.
Amendment says that those should be left to the states and to the people. But
no, that's the 10th Amendment.
You know what?
The 9th Amendment says this is not the only rights that we have. You have the individuals, the people have other rights other than this. And I'm just telling you, this whole idea, if you're going to read the Constitution as a strict constructionist, what you're doing is you're unleashing Congress to make a bunch of damn laws.
But that's okay. That's okay. Those are the people's representatives. These 9 people on the Supreme Court are not. And so for the Congress to come out and make actions, then people can vote on those people, and we can address those issues. We can counter those issues.
The founders were never for unlimited. They were never for unlimited power by legislature. That's the whole point of the Constitution, is to limit the power of legislative.
Well, that's fine.
Majorities.
But the court doesn't get to legislate, and that's what happened here.
And unfortunately, under Roe and Casey, I mean, it's just it's limited the ability to enact things that make common sense, right? I think most Americans would prefer some more moderation in this, if not, an abolishment of abortion. But you can't even, in Texas, we tried to pass laws to enact the same safety, the same safety standards. Wait a second, the same safety standards that we would expect from other medical facilities. You can't even do that because everybody's afraid it's going to inhibit abortion. I don't think that that is compassionate towards women. I think that,
there's about 15% of the people in the country that want to ban abortion completely.
There are some, and there are some people who want abortion up until the day of birth. I mean, we saw that testimony in the Virginia legislature.
Of the country has supported Roe versus Wade decision. I'm just telling you, there'll be a tremendous political backlash.
They may support the name of it, the idea that abortion is legal. I don't think that many people would support the kind of abortion that some of these people are advocating for. We saw the testimony in the Virginia legislature of the young woman who was saying, yes, it's okay to go ahead and abort the baby right up until the point of birth. I think
that
that's
just doesn't happen. This is a
specious
argument.
That's not reality.
99% of abortions in Texas, 99% of abortions in Texas occurred before the 15th week in 2020. And what the doctors tell me is that essentially every one that occurs after 15 weeks is based on a medical determination. They're mostly done in big hospitals that a committee of a dozen doctors have signed off on the abortion. This idea that they're out there doing elective abortions in the late term, that is a myth. It does not occur. It does not happen.
But they want people to believe and they push the issue.
It does not happen. I'm telling you, 99% of the, this is state of Texas statistics, 99% of abortions in Texas in 2020, 99% of them occurred before 15 weeks.
And let me tell you, most of the abortions that happen across this nation happen in minorities. Okay?
Absolutely.
It happens
by design. By design.
Yes. They put their clinics in minority communities. I remember, yes, he may get on my nerve, but I remember when Jesse Jackson said something about this back in the 80s, that was a problem. Why are they putting them in minority communities?
Because Margaret Sanger targeted the minority communities.
I agree. I do not agree. And I'll be there. Let me say this here. Ain't nobody having no abortion as a means of birth control. That is unconscionable. I'm not lying. And being in college, I remember some girls who had by the time we graduated, had several. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? None of them, let me be clear, none of them or any other people that lived in the dorms did it in the terms you talk about, Holly. Not one. They were all very early. Not one of them was that late. I don't believe that you should give abortions up to a certain point. I don't. You shouldn't be getting no damn abortion at 6 months. Your ass knew you was pregnant. I don't agree with that. But I don't believe abortion. How could you all see the kids that have been killed by their parents, hell, beat to death, and say that they should have still had these kids when they didn't give a damn about them, but while they was pregnant, and sure as hell didn't give a shit when they lived? How can you say there should be no abortions? That's unconscionable in itself, because you ain't gonna buy a damn diaper or a bottle or anything else. So it does need to have some fixing done, but I don't believe you should abolish all abortions, because that is stupid, okay? Because if you have a mother who is in distress, who makes that decision, and then in Texas to say you still got to have a baby if you got raped in this incest, oh my God, don't tell people how you got here. You giving away too many signals, okay? Don't say that stuff, because everybody thinks if you're raped, you should have the right to decide as a woman what you want to do. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Where the hell does yours end?
Well, that's what needs to be defined. Where does life begin and where does it deserve to be protected? I'm glad you brought up the race issue in there. 27 out of 1,000 Black women end up taking abortion as an alternative compared to 10 out of 1,000 white women. The Planned Parenthood targeted minority communities from the very beginning with the intent of eugenics to eliminate young black babies and stop.
Oh, come on, Bob.
That is
Come on.
absolutely
You know,
true.
I-
Why else
on.
were they targeting those communities? Why is that number so far
If
out of
you don't
line?
think black people believe
You-
that, you're
you
wrong.
are-
You're not black. Black people believe exactly what Bob is saying. That was the purpose of it. It was to eliminate the black population. As I said, yes, he get on my nerve, but I remember when they talked about this. And I'm telling you, my mom had a friend and my dad had a friend back who in the 60s, I guess, latter 60s, early 70s, died from going to one of those places that weren't legal to try to have an abortion and were killed.
Just a little bit
And
of
that's, and
good news.
you're talking about a place that wasn't legal, correct, Tomorrow? At a time before that it was legal to have an abortion. In again, stressing the point
can
that
be
we need to
dangerous
keep
for
this
women, and
service
they
available and legal.
They need to be regulated. These abortion facilities do need to be regulated. They do need to have the same safety standards as any other surgical center. Just a piece of good news. In those communities where these abortion clinics are situated, there's also a growing number of crisis pregnancy centers that do help women obtain prenatal care. They do help them, if they decide to keep a child, to take parenting classes, it's usually free. They do provide the diapers. They do provide for these women's needs. And if they decide to put up a child for adoption, that's available too. So if anybody's listening and they're in that situation and they don't want to make that decision, look for one of those centers.
As an adoptive child myself, my biological mother was unwed and took me to term. I felt it was appropriate, maybe not from a legal sense, but at least from a national conversation sense for Justice Amy Coney Barrett to bring up the adoption issue during the hearing. I mean, how does the panel feel about that?
I don't think it was appropriate for the Supreme Court Justice to be bringing that up. I do agree with you that yes, there needs to be more discussion about options, but I don't think from the bench of the US Supreme Court that that's the place for that to happen.
Anybody else?
I thought it was fine. I was a little more.
Problem. I'd have a problem with it. Hell, I think she should. I mean, look, when you got to make a decision that's going to affect a million people, you need to bring up all options and everything related to that. I do think that for a lot of people to say adoption, I don't know, they don't understand it or they feel that that's something wrong with giving your baby up for adoption. I don't know. I don't understand all of that. Why people think that. I've heard of this now with the DNA. People get knocks on their doors because people figured out who they were and maybe they didn't want them to know. But I know a wonderful, wonderful story that I want to share with you all. This lady gave her baby up for adoption when she was 15. She ended up going to college, getting married and everything, had a daughter and a son. Her son died in a horrific accident, devastated her. She was unconsolable. The son she gave up at 38 found her. He found her and he talked about how his adoptive mother, I would tell him, don't hate your mother. She could have killed you. She has a grandchild. It turned into a wonderful story. God gave her back her baby, So I'm not going to sit up here and say, oh, don't mention the word adoption. Shit, knowledge is power. Tell them everything they need to know, because that's a decision you got to make for yourself.
From a cultural perspective, whether or not you agree with abortion, I think some of the unfortunate rhetoric that's come around this is the idea that, a woman cannot live a fulfilling life or have a successful career if she chooses to have a child. That some of that is just so distasteful to me. And, I think we had at least 2 city council members here in Houston who were pregnant and have very young children and continue to serve. I mean, this idea that, having children is a burden or pregnancy is some sort of, curse on women is terrible. We should be affirming women. We should be affirming parenthood and motherhood and so forth.
The vast majority of women that have abortions say that the reason that they have it is because they can't afford to raise a child. That's the reality. And it is skewed towards minorities, but then also poverty is skewed towards minorities. This is an issue. This is an economic issue. And, frankly, I tell my friends on the right all the time, if y'all spend as much time, supporting young women who are faced with this decision and helping them have and raise a child as you do trying to
But
make it
many
illegal,
do.
you would actually have a lot fewer abortions. Here's the fundamental question, though, and this is something that goes back to ancient times. Actually, Justice Brennan's opinion, which I reread this week in Roe versus Wade, really lays this out quite well. All the way back as far as we have written history, there's been this issue about when does life begin? And in ancient times, it was what they call the quickening, which was the first time that you could detect a movement of the fetus, which is not really until probably 20 to 25 weeks, something like that. The idea that that life begins at conception is a relatively new idea. That's something that's really only been around for maybe 100 years or something like that. Before that, it was always at some point in time during the pregnancy. And when you start polling people on this, what's really fascinating is if you show them pictures of the fetus and say, when do you think that it needs to be the cutoff? And the fetus has rights. It's not just a part of the woman's body. It actually is a separate. It is when the fetus starts looking like a human being, which is somewhere around 15 weeks. And if you look across most European countries, I think Holly made this point, most European countries have a cutoff at around somewhere in that 12 to 16 week period. And I'm going to tell you, I think if you go right now and pull up a picture of a fetus at 15 weeks, you're going to have a real queasy feeling about going in and cutting that out and killing that fetus. I'm just telling you.
A lot of people
now,
know.
at 6 weeks, it's microscopic. It's smaller than the grain of a grain of rice. There's no way that you can recognize even what it is. I think that's a different situation. And that's what the polling shows over and over and over, is that people at some point in time during the pregnancy, this is a creature that deserves its own rights that are separate and apart from the mother's. Where that cutoff is, there's no objective way to decide that. I mean, you're basically deciding it based on religious or cultural, beliefs. There's no scientific way to determine, when that cutoff point is.
And yet, in the liberal state of California, if you kill a pregnant woman, it's a double homicide. And it doesn't matter if she's 6 weeks or 2 weeks, or if she's been determined to be pregnant and you kill her, you get charged with a double homicide. So that life does deserve protecting from a third party, just not protecting from the mother itself. Is the argument.
But if you're going to say that life begins at conception, then every time there's a miscarriage, we need to name that person. They need to have property rights. We need to have a funeral for them. Nobody does that.
They don't do that at all.
So I just think it's.
Well, I'm not making that argument, Bill. I'm making the argument that we have to define when life begins. That was another one of the arguments.
I'm okay with that.
Let me finish here. Was one of the other arguments against stare decisis in this case is that technology has evolved so much in the last 50 years that we have a better definition now. We have a better opportunity to look at whether this is a life that deserves and is inherently endowed with the rights of life and protected under the Fifth Amendment from having life removed without due process. It's a legal issue as much as it is a religious issue.
Yeah, I think it's more likely the Supreme Court's going to overturn the viability standard than they are just to say as they are to overturn the right of privacy. Because if you overturn the right of privacy, it really implicates a lot of other things. Like for example, the right to take contraception is based on that right of privacy, as a whole lot of other rights are. I mean, there's many rights that are based on this finding by the Supreme Court that there's this sort of, and I don't like the word privacy. They also describe it as autonomy and some other things. And I'm just telling you, I would encourage y'all, Bob and Holly, to go read George Will's book, Conservative Sensibility, because he makes this argument that this idea of a strict construction of the Constitution is not a conservative idea. And I agree with him, because it turns Congress loose to make a bunch of bad laws and just trample all over individual rights.
And the Supreme Court can judge those laws and determine if they're constitutional or not. And that's the way the process.
But what I'm saying is that if you say that I'm going to keep this strict constructions, it really unleashes Congress, and the Supreme Court, if anything, has been far too reticent to rein in Congress based on, rights that are not specifically enumerated in the Bill of Rights, which the Ninth Amendment clearly says we have.
All right, now that we've said that, I want to share this with you all before we run out of time. First off, I want to thank you, Bill, and I want to thank the many Houstonians, and I mean it, many, who came to the aid of the Super Feast. The Super Feast was in a dire situation this year, and they have the Christmas feast coming up, and I mean dire, where because you make reservations in order to come to eat, and because they generally have thousands above the reservations, they did not have enough food 2 days before Thanksgiving. They did not. And Houstonians stepped up. Commissioner Ramsey, Commissioner Cagle, Gilbert Garcia, North Commerce, Taste Restaurant, Turkey Leg, and many others, and Bill King, they gave money. I'm telling you all, these children that y'all talking about, whose parents did decide to keep them, who are on the margin, they were there. I don't know if y'all remember, but Thanksgiving morning, it was cold and it was rainy. We didn't open till 10. They were out there with their children in line in that rain at 6:30 in the morning to get that food. We had to get with the George R. Brown to open the doors early to let them come in out of the rain. We end up serving over 20-something thousand people. At Christmas, it's more because we try to make sure. Parents tell us all the time what the kid got at that event was all they got for Christmas. So we try to give each kid a toy, a hot meal, and a sack of groceries to take home with them. So if you can, Houston Citywide Club of America, go to their website and donate, or go to their office and drop off a toy, drop off some groceries, because it's needed. Because there are people who are suffering and have not recovered from this pandemic, from Harvey, or from the freeze, and they really need our help. And I'm really willing to thank you all, because Houston, you all showed up and showed out. We got 200 turkeys on Tuesday night, in time for them to cook them for Thursday. So I'm telling you all, I thank you all very much, because Houston still has a big heart.
Anybody else have a burning desire to get a topic out? Go ahead, Bobo.
Yeah, I want to say Lana and I had the honor yesterday of attending the funeral of a 90-year-old retired fire chief on Alaska, Texas, assistant chief. And Bob Stutz was, from all accounts at this funeral, was an amazing man of service to his community, service not only through the fire department, risking his life to save the lives of others in fires and in floods, traveled the country to respond to natural disasters, but also created programs here, in the city of Onalaska, where putting out the flags on the 4th of July along the highway, creating a Christmas program for the community. These are things that are living on beyond his life that he helped start, and the outpouring of love from that community towards the family of Bob Stutz, who still serve the fire department to this day. Many of them. One of them is a captain in the fire department in Houston. And it was an amazing story to listen to. It was one of the most uplifting funerals I think I've ever been to, celebrating his life. And hats off, I salute you. He was a Korean War veteran. Thank you for your service to this community, to the nation, and to the people of Texas.
I got one. Speaking of firefighters, go get your firefighter calendar. It's back after 4-year absence. 12 hunky firefighters for you to look at for all of 2022.
I have a complaint about this.
Wait a minute, let me get the website in before you complain.
Okay.
You can go purchase it online at
complaint. I want to hear Bill's complaint.
Oh, let Janice finish.
Put this down, let her finish. Come on, Janice,
The
I'm ready.
website is houstonsbravest.org, and they're $25 plus $5 for shipping. So make good stocking
All
stuffing.
right.
Bill was
First of all, I would
promoting the opposite
encourage
of that. You guys-
everybody to go buy a calendar. I actually saw these guys at the firefighter, and all you ladies will love to go. But here's what my complaint is. About 3 or 4 years ago, there was a lady firefighter calendar, which the fire department management nixed after the first year. I think that it's sexual discrimination for us not to have a ladies firefighter calendar as well as a man's firefighter calendar. And I'm just telling you, the ladies in that calendar were hot. And I don't mean from the
Are you
top.
saying there's a shortage of calendars of hot women? Because I don't see it.
No, I'm just telling you, the ladies in the Houston Fire Department need to be recognized. That's my only point.
There are many
Let me
women
plug
that, yes,
Janice.
they would do well in the calendar.
Yes, I'm saying
Yeah.
the mail catalog is delightful. It is. I mean, you just can't wait for the months to pass to see who's coming up. It is very, very delightful.
Well, all I can say is that we were at the event. Cheryl bought one of the calendars, and I'm just here to complain that I don't have a calendar that I want to buy.
All right, folks, I want to close overtime this way.
Greg, one thing, I'm sorry, Bob reminded me, we lost a wonderful lady, 108. Cousin B is what we called her. She helped raise James Baker from a baby. She was still very close to their family. She mentored Barbara Jordan, and she went to the beauty shop with me. And when COVID happened, she told our beautician that she was so sorry that those people could not come to the beauty shop. She said, but my house is open. This hair is 100 years old. I need to keep it. You got to come here. So the beautician would go to her house and do her hair. And she was like, well, are you going somewhere? She said, no, it makes me feel good. She still had clarity and mind. And so she will be, I mean it, she will be missed, truly missed.
All right, everybody. I intentionally didn't tell all the panelists this. Each one of them I consider a close personal friend. When I leave today, I'll be driving to Laredo. My father is in intensive care. Situation is very dire.
Sorry, Greg.
Sorry.
Greg, our thoughts and prayers are with you. And
I got a master class in how to handle this from my friend Bill King. And so we're going to head down there. I welcome your prayers.
Anything we can do.
Bill
let us know.
Groogan is one hell of a man.
You got
With
it.
that, I will, I'll see you guys next week.
All right.
Take care.
That's Steve.
Yes.
see you then.